Happy Wednesday! You're listening to Mama Murdered a Podcast. I'm your host, AB. And this week on Mama Murdered a Podcast, we're covering another super well-known, super controversial case. The case of Caylee and Casey Anthony. Caylee Anthony was a 3-year-old girl from Florida who was missing for over 30 days before her grandma finally called to report her missing. So it wasn't even Caylee's mom, Casey, that called and reported her 3-year-old daughter had been missing for 31 days. It was Caylee's grandma. And most people know this case, or at least know of this case. So I feel like I don't really need to do much of an introduction here. But I do still feel like this is a pretty important case to cover in true crime history. So I figured, why not? This, for sure, will be a multi-part case. But don't ask me how many parts because I'm not sure yet. So without further ado, let's get it. On July 15th, 2008, a pretty weird call came into Florida law enforcement, and on the other end of that call was Cindy Anthony. She was calling to try to have her daughter, Casey, arrested for grand theft auto and for stealing money from her. But that wasn't really the reason for her call to law enforcement at all. She was actually calling because she hadn't seen her 3-year-old granddaughter, Caylee, in over 30 days. June 16th was the last time that Cindy and her husband, George Anthony, had seen their 3-year-old granddaughter, Caylee. Now, there are 3 911 calls, or 3 calls to law enforcement at least, that Cindy made on this day when she realized that Casey didn't actually know where Caylee was. And we'll get into how this even happened and how it even took 31 days. But first, I want to play these 911 calls, and then we're going to go back in time a little bit to the beginning, and then we'll re-listen to these 911 calls when it comes up in the timeline. So let's start from there. Now, in these 911 calls, you'll hear Cindy Anthony, who is the grandmother to 3-year-old Caylee, who is reported missing. And then Cindy and George are the parents of Casey Anthony, who's actually the mom of 3-year-old Caylee. This will make a whole lot more sense, I swear. It only sounds confusing because of all the C names, and so the first one we're going to hear is Cindy Anthony, the grandmother to 3-year-old Caylee Anthony.
Please, this sound is being recorded. I can help you. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, I drove to the police department here on Pershing, but you guys are closed. I need to bring someone into the police department. Can you tell me where the closest one I can come into?
What are you trying to accomplish by bringing them to the station?
I have a 22-year-old person that has grand theft sitting in my auto with me.
So the 22-year-old person stole something?
Yes.
Is this a relative?
Yes.
Where did they steal it from?
My car and also money.
Okay, is this your son?
Daughter.
Okay, so your daughter stole money from your car?
No, my car was stolen. We retrieved it today. We found out where it was at. We retrieved it. I've got that, and I've got affidavit from my banking account. I want to bring her in. I want to press charges.
Where did all of this happen?
Oh, it's been happening.
No, but I need to establish a jurisdiction is what I'm trying to do.
Oh, I live in Orlando.
Yeah, but what address did these thefts occur at?
Well, I guess my residence, I guess.
Okay. That's actually going to be in the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office, ma'am, not the Orlando Police Department.
Alrighty.
Let me transfer you over to the communications section for Orange County.
Okay. Now, is the Orlando Sheriff's Department the one on 436, is that open this afternoon, this evening?
The substation you're at on Pershing, if it's Orlando Police, we're open primarily during the day.
Uh-huh.
But that's not the sheriff. That's the city police, which does not have jurisdiction for your
And then there's the Sheriff's Department on 436.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer you to the sheriff's communications section, and you can determine that. Hold on.
Okay. Because my next thing will be down the child thing, and we'll have a court order to get her. That's what you want to play. We'll do it. And you'll never. Well, then you have one more day. No, I'm not giving you another day. I've given you a month. All right, Senator. 911, what's the address? What's happening? I have someone here that I need to be arrested in my home.
They're there right now?
I have a possible missing child. I have a 3-year-old that's been missing for a month.
A 3-year-old?
Yes.
Have you reported that?
I'm trying to do that now, ma'am.
Okay, what did the person do that you need arrested?
My daughter.
For what?
For stealing an auto and stealing money. I already spoke with someone. They said they would patch me through the Orlando Sheriff's Department, have a deputy here. I was in the car. I was going to drive her to the police station, and no one's open. They said they would bring a deputy to my home when I got home to call them.
So she stole your vehicle?
Yes.
When did she do that?
On the 30th. I just got it back from the impound. I'd like to speak to an officer. Can you have someone come out to my house?
Okay. Okay, I gotta ask you these questions so I can put them in the call, okay?
Okay.
30th of June?
Yes.
Okay, how old is your daughter?
22.
Okay, what's her name?
My name?
Her name.
Her name?
And you said you have the vehicle back?
Yes. I have the statement.
She's there right now?
Yes, I got her. I finally found her after a month. She's been missing for a month. I found her, but we can't find my granddaughter. 5'1.5".
Thin, medium, or heavy build?
Thin.
Color hair?
Brown.
What color shirt is she wearing?
White.
What color pants?
Oh, they're shorts. They're plaid. They're like pink and teal and white and black plaid.
Does she have any weapons on her?
No.
Is she not telling you where her daughter is?
Correct.
Okay, we'll have a deputy out to you as soon as one's available, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So those were the first 2 calls that Cindy made to police. And I don't know why she wouldn't lead with, we don't know where our granddaughter is. But here we are. Now, the third call that she made to 911, I want you to really listen to this one because the wordage, the verbiage. Cindy's a nurse and her husband George is ex-law enforcement. And that will be important when she starts talking about the car. So I'm going to play the third and final 911 call now.
911, what's your emergency? I called a little bit ago. The deputy sheriff saying I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. Her mother finally admitted that she's been missing.
Okay, what is
here now?
Okay, what is the address that you're calling from?
We're talking about a 3-year-old little girl. My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her.
Your daughter admitted that the baby is where?
But the babysitter took her a month ago that my daughter's been looking for. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. She just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Caylee. Caylee. Anthony.
Caylee Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, is she white, black, or Hispanic?
She's white.
How long has she been missing for?
I have not seen her since the 7th of June.
What is her date of birth?
8/9/2000. Oh God, she's 3. She's 2005. George Carey's missing. Carey's missing. Casey said Danny took her a month ago. She's been missing for a month.
Okay, I understand. Can you calm down for me for just a minute and I need to know what's going on, okay? I'm gonna try and talk. Is your daughter there?
I'm on the phone with them.
Is your daughter there?
Yes.
Can I speak with her? Do you mind if I speak with her? Thank you.
haven't gotten here. She finally admitted to Mary took her a month ago.
Ma'am.
She's downstairs. They want to talk to you. Answer the question. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Well, can you tell me what's going on a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
And you know who has her?
I know who has her. I've tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute.
Okay, did you guys call and report a vehicle stolen?
Yes, my mom did. Yep.
Okay, so there's been a vehicle stolen too?
No, this is my vehicle.
What vehicle was stolen?
It's a 98 Pontiac Sunfire.
Okay, I have deputies on the way to you right now for that. But now your 3-year-old daughter is missing. Caylee Anthony.
Yes.
White female.
Anthony. Yes, white female.
3 years old, 8/9/2005 her date of birth?
Yes.
And you last saw her a month ago?
31 days. Some 31 days.
Who has her? Do you have a name?
Her name is Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
Who is that? Babysitter?
She's been my nanny for about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
And why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago?
I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her, which was stupid.
Okay. Can you give me the name of the nanny again? Like, spell it out for me?
Zenaida, Zenaida.
Last name? Fernandez?
-Gonzalez. I think the officers are here.
The officers are there?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a second. Don't hang up with me yet. I need you... Okay.
And when I tell you that this call shook the entire nation, I mean that literally. This case made headlines in every state, and I don't know a single soul that hasn't heard the last name Anthony. I feel like this case really doesn't need an introduction, and it doesn't really need like a timeline of main players and events, but that is what I do. So again, here we are. So I am going to do a rundown of the timeline, the main players, things leading up to the case that may or may not be relevant, because I feel like, yes, we had a trial, but we still don't have answers, and the documentary that just came out about this, makes me gag. Anyways, so let's back up and start before these 911 calls, because usually the best place to start is the beginning. The main players in this case are going to be 3-year-old missing Caylee, Kaylee's mom, Casey, and Casey's parents and Kaylee's grandparents, Cindy and George. So let's start with Cindy and George. Cindy was working as a RN, or a registered nurse, at a local hospital, and while Cindy was at work one day, she met her future husband, George, and George was working in a sheriff's deputy in the local sheriff's office in his early 20s. George had told his first wife, Terry, that his life's dream wasn't actually anything in law enforcement, but it was actually to work at a Disney theme park and be like living in Orlando, Florida, getting paid to dress up as Disney characters just to make kids happy. So I don't know if that's a red flag or not, honestly. So George was at the hospital visiting with his sister, and Cindy was the nurse that was on duty to care for his sister. And the two hit it off. The only problem with this like meet cute love story scene is that George is still married to his first wife, Terry, who he had been with since high school. And according to people that knew George and his first wife, Terry, they said that George had actually filed for divorce without saying a word about even wanting to separate first. So he kind of filed for divorce and just didn't mention it, which I feel like that would be awkward. I'm sure it got awkward, especially when a friend called to tell Terry that she had seen her divorce filings, like court filings that had been published in the local paper. But that's neither here nor there. George and Terry would go on to file and go through with their divorce, but can we just all keep in mind that the entire Anthony family just kind of blows all their problems off and acts like they don't exist? Like a toddler mentality. Like, if I can't see you, then you can't see me. And that's just not how real life works. But that's how this family works. So even though Cindy knew that George was still married when she met him and started dating him, Cindy didn't tell anybody in her family that George was still married. She just kept that little nugget to herself. And this is kind of where the Anthony family starts. And we slowly start to see how much everybody within the Anthony family actually cares about what they look like to the outside world. For instance, like, yes, Cindy didn't tell anybody that George was married when they had first gotten together, yet she stayed with him and married him anyways. And Cindy and George would go on to have their first baby together. It would be a son named Lee. Cindy eventually became a stay-at-home mom, and George quit his job at the sheriff's office and got into the used car salesman line of work. Cindy hoped that they would bring in more money this way, and the couple would be able to move higher up into the middle-class food chain. But keep in mind that George Anthony was in law enforcement for a good bit of time before this crime ever happened. So George started working with his own dad at the car salesman shop called Anthony's Auto Sales and Service. And like I said, this was just a way that he and Cindy hoped they would be able to become more highfalutin members of society. Cindy and George had gone to have their second kid together, Casey Anthony. And even though George had quit his job in law enforcement and he'd taken this job at the car dealerships, the couple seemed to have money problems all the way around. And not for nothing, but some of George's family have been quoted saying that Cindy sucked the life out of George. And for all we know, this could be true. But what I know is that George also sucked the money out of the savings account too. But anyways, George would go on to lose the job at the car dealership, and instead of trying to figure things out financially, he just took out a second mortgage on the family home and used that money to open up his own car dealership. I guess he just figured that would make everything go away. Even though George wasn't a good car salesman, and he didn't even really like people. So, of course, after about 2 years, Cindy and George filed for bankruptcy and the bank took their house. Cindy still to this day claims that she didn't know that they were struggling financially. And I don't know how that would work. I guess we'll just go along with it and pretend that she didn't know they were broke the entire time. I guess we'll do that. George also struggled for years after this with a gambling problem, which in turn just caused more financial stress and hardship for the family. And kids are like sponges. They soak up every single thing that they see, hear, or are told, and they use that going forward in their own lives. So avoiding a problem and hoping that it would go away was a super normal everyday occurrence in the Anthony house. For example, George taking out the second mortgage instead of finding a financial solution to all their money problems. And letting things get to the point of bankruptcy and where the bank's taking your houses, this will be like a running theme that we'll see where they're all impeccably good at dodging issues or pretending that issues just don't exist at all. So about the time that Casey was 3 or so, George and Cindy decided to move to Florida in the late 80s. And from here, Cindy started working at an orthopedic surgeon's office, and with this job, she was later able to buy another house. And this house will become a huge factor in this case at some point. And the address to this house was 4937 Hope Springs Drive in Orlando, Florida. And as far as George goes, he just kind of job hopped from one job to the next. But his online gambling habits were still sinking the family financially. And this is also just another running theme that you'll see in this case where George sinks the ship financially every time. So now that we know at least a little bit of background on the family and how we got here, let's talk about Casey Anthony. She was said to be fun, vivacious, energetic, and a happy kid. And Casey would later go on to attend the Colonial High School in Orlando, Florida. And there she was popular, had lots of friends, and of course lots of boyfriends during her time in high school. But it seemed like it was more than just always having a boyfriend though, because Casey did seem to always have a boyfriend, or at least some kind of male figure in her life and around her at all times. There was even a doctor that would go on later to say that Casey would likely have a new boyfriend lined up before she would ever break up with the old boyfriend that she was tired of. Kind of like she always had a replacement boyfriend just standing in wait. And then this backup guy would just kind of slide into the place of the guy that Casey had just got tired of. But it is known to most and agreed upon that Casey did always have some kind of male friend or boyfriend around her constantly, even after high school. And Casey actually did pretty good in school. She got good grades, she ran track, and friends that she went to school with said that Casey wasn't confrontational whatsoever, that she was extremely easy to get along with, more like a go-with-the-flow, like make the best of it type of person. Casey also spent a lot of time on social media and keeping the internet world up to date with her Instagram-worthy perfect life. Even though this was long before Instagram, you catch my drift. But according to people that knew Casey, they almost described it like Casey would go above and beyond to avoid conflicts or arguments. But Casey was so good at avoiding conflicts that it was also like she was good at it to a fault. And people that went to high school with Casey would come out later and say that if Casey even sensed that she was going to be confronted about something that she did, then she was nowhere to be found. And if they were able to find her to confront her about whatever it was, then she would just gaslight the hell out of them, make them feel crazy, or maybe even make them feel like they misunderstood the situation. And if that didn't work, then Casey's older brother Lee was always standing guard to come to his sister's defense. But how good can somebody be at gaslighting and avoiding conflict? Like, how does their entire family just go along with these gaslighting and lies? Because some of the things that happened leading up to Caylee's murder and some of the things that happened during the investigation and the trial just seem unreal. Like, some of these things that would later come out, if you saw it on a TV show or a movie, you would be like, they took that too far. That wouldn't really happen in real life. But it did. Like, this family did. Okay, so let's jump to 2004. Casey is a semi-adult. She's about to graduate high school. And she'd always been a good student, and it was finally time to walk across the stage. But during her senior year, Casey had started skipping a lot of classes, not turning in assignments and papers that needed to be turned in to be able to graduate. And the school told Casey that she wasn't going to be able to graduate because of all the missed assignments, missed days, and her grades. And even though Casey knew that she wasn't actually going to walk across the stage, she never told anybody. She never told her parents, so Cindy and George are planning and throwing this huge graduation party. But when it comes time for the caps and gowns to come in, Cindy and George start asking questions about where Casey's cap and gown were. And Casey just told her parents that the school hadn't ordered hers, but that she had taken care of it and not to worry about it. So she was trying to sell the lie that the school ordered everybody else's cap and gown, but somehow forgot to order just Casey's. That sounds believable. So I guess George and Cindy just kind of took Casey's word for it, and eventually the school did call to tell Cindy and George that Casey wasn't going to be graduating. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, cancel the party, call and let everybody know what's going on, so on and so forth. But what did Cindy and George actually do? They went to the graduation ceremony anyways, and they took Casey's grandparents with them. So now Casey's parents and her grandparents are just sitting in the audience waiting to watch their granddaughter walk across the stage. But Casey's name never got called to walk across the stage for her diploma. You know why? Because she wasn't actually graduating. And Cindy and George knew this, yet they still went to the graduation ceremony, and they still took Casey's grandparents to the ceremony with them. And when Casey's grandparents started asking questions like, hey, why is our granddaughter not getting her diploma and walking across the stage like everybody else? Cindy just told them that the school had somehow made a mistake, that Casey did actually graduate. She just wasn't able to walk across the stage like everybody else. But literally everybody else that was there was able to walk across the stage. And like I mentioned, the graduation party wasn't canceled. They still had the damn graduation party. Casey still got celebrated with money and gifts, and she kept every gift and every dollar that she received for a high school graduation that she wasn't even a part of. Like, I'm so curious, how many of y'all's parents would lie for you like this? Like, I'm genuinely curious. Because my mom would never. She absolutely would never drag my papa to sit through a graduation ceremony knowing damn well that I hadn't put the time, work, and effort in to be celebrated on graduation day. Like, y'all hit me up in the comments on a post or the DM. Let me know if your parents would go to this extreme to help you lie. I'm genuinely curious. So this is just one of the many different times that Cindy and George would cover up for Caylee and her web of lies. And to me, as a parent, as a regular mom, this seems like one of the bigger things that Cindy and George did to kind of just send the message to Caylee that it's okay as long as you can lie your way through it. I feel like this was just one more thing where they were basically saying, as long as you can lie your way out of it, just don't tell the truth. And that's essentially what they told her, especially with like a lie this big. Family members from out of town had sent gifts and money, and everybody's walking around this party like telling Caylee congratulations and, saying how proud Cindy and George must be. And Cindy and George are just watching and participating in this huge lie. And they just went right along with it. And I think a lot of the things that Cindy and George just went along with as far as like this stuff goes, I think that Cindy mainly did it because she didn't want any kind of negative image portrayed about her family to the outside world. Like, from what I've read, from what I've seen, it seems like it didn't really matter what was going on inside of their house, as long as no one knew what was going on, if that makes sense. As long as everybody in the house looked happy, healthy, and, whatever from the outside looking in, that's really all she cared about. And if Caylee grew up around situations being completely ignored and shoved under the rug so that they looked like the perfect family to everybody else, then why wouldn't she just continue to ignore and avoid everything bad that ever happened to her? Ever. Like, I hate Caylee Anthony with a passion. So this is for sure not me making excuses for her in any way, shape, or form. This is just me being a realist and looking at how she was raised and just, raised to just lie her way through everything to be able to maintain, a perfect family image for everybody on the outside. I can totally see how things got this far out of hand. And as crazy as it sounds, I can't even understand why she just lied and lied and lied even after she was caught. Because she was raised to just lie the problem away or ignore it altogether and pretend that it doesn't exist until it does go away. Caylee still lived with Cindy and George after her fake high school graduation, and she eventually got a job taking pictures of people at Universal Studios. And then she would have the pictures developed and pulled up at a picture kiosk where she would try to get people to buy the pictures that she'd taken of them, as a souvenir to take home from their trip, memorabilia, whatever. We've all been, harassed and stalked by these picture people. And she got this job sometime in June of 2004, and in January of 2005, Caylee met a man by the name of Jesse Grund. And Jesse worked as an undercover security guard for the loss prevention inside of Universal Studios, and Jesse and Caylee just hit it off immediately. They fell hard and fast. But eventually, all good things come to an end, and Caylee and Jesse remained friends even after their relationship. But when Caylee was 19, she and her mom Cindy attended a family wedding in South Carolina. And family members were asking Cindy when Caylee was due because she was so clearly pregnant. And Cindy just told everybody that had asked that Caylee was retaining fluids. But like I mentioned, this is a running theme in this case because that was a lie. Caylee eventually went to the doctor in 2005 in July, where she was told that she was in fact pregnant and that she was already almost 8 months pregnant. So she'd just been walking around looking very much pregnant and telling anybody who asked that she was just retaining fluids. And I just don't see how she thought this lie was just really going to pan out for her, though. What was her end goal? She would have had the baby either way. 8 months is way too far along for an abortion, and Caylee still lives with her parents. Caylee's mom, Cindy, was a nurse, for God's sakes. She should have known that Caylee was pregnant. And Caylee never told anybody, still to this day, who the baby daddy was. Cindy and George did ask her once or twice, but after she told them that she didn't really want to talk about it, they just dropped it and never brought it up again. Caylee did eventually text her ex-boyfriend and still friend, Jesse Grund, to tell him that she was pregnant and that he was the father. Which was fine by him. Like, I think he was even excited. But after Jesse started doing the math in his head over the next few weeks, he started putting two and two together, and he realized that Caylee had to have already been pregnant before he'd ever even met her. But then when Jesse would bring up the dates and the time frames to Casey's attention, she would insist that he was the father and that they should just drop the whole conversation. So Jesse did. So now we have Caylee telling Jesse that she's pregnant and that he's the father. Meanwhile, Casey's parents, Cindy and George, didn't even know Jesse's name. They didn't know that he and Caylee had dated. They didn't know about Jesse at all. And they didn't really have a lot of time to figure it out, considering Caylee was already 8 months pregnant when she supposedly found out about her pregnancy. And on August 9th, 2005, Caylee Marie Anthony was born with Cindy and George in the room with Caylee while she gave birth to their first granddaughter. And once Caylee was actually born, Cindy was actually the first person to get to hold Caylee, which I thought was super weird. Like, this is a mom moment to the max. Why would Cindy steal it? But then after Caylee was born, Jesse had even more questions about if he was actually Caylee's dad or not. Jesse claimed that he and Caylee weren't even together until the end of January. And Caylee was born full term in August. So from the end of January to the beginning of August isn't even a full 9-month term that a typical pregnancy usually is. So he's right. Caylee would have had to have already been a month or two pregnant with Caylee before she ever met Jesse. So yet another lie. But this is her normal. So after Caylee was born, Cindy and George kind of let Caylee think that she was in charge of Caylee and doing the mom thing. But in reality, there are multiple people who have remembered hearing Cindy and George tell people that Caylee was their daughter. And the way they start acting later on, this actually makes a lot of sense. This checks out. It also seems like after Caylee was born that Caylee and Cindy fought a lot more about a lot different things, even more than they had before. And Cindy would kind of threaten to take custody of Caylee from Caylee when they were fighting and arguing. But Caylee and Caylee both still lived in Cindy and George's house with them. So unless Caylee was just dropping the ball left and right, then I don't really know how these threats would have been able to go through. But aside from the fighting with her parents, everybody said that even though Caylee was pretty young when she had Caylee, that she was a really good mom, that she was present and that she was aware, and that she was just a regular doting mother. And this is a completely different vision than what I have of Caylee in my head when I think about her, but I also don't know her personally, so who knows. Maybe she was a great mom. Maybe she didn't kill her daughter. And maybe she doesn't deserve the title of world's most hated mom. But, I mean, we really don't get a say-so either way with our opinions because, spoiler alert, she was never convicted of Caylee's murder. I'm getting off topic, so let's get back to it. Caylee was said to be a good mom to Caylee, and Caylee was adorable. She was precious, and she's smiling in damn near every picture you find of her. And after maternity leave was up, Caylee went back to work at the picture kiosk for Universal Studios. Or at least that's what she told everybody she was doing. Because we later found out that Caylee didn't actually go back to work at Universal Studios after she'd had Caylee. And that Caylee was officially terminated from Universal in April of 2006. But Cindy, George, and all of Caylee's other friends and family all thought that she was still going to work every day. And all of Caylee's family and friends all thought that Caylee was going to work because they were all taking turns babysitting Caylee, while Caylee was supposed to be at work. Caylee would either get Cindy and George to babysit Caylee while she was quote-unquote at work, or she would get another friend or family member while she was at work to babysit Caylee. But she wasn't going to work. Y'all, I don't know what she was doing, but y'all, Caylee was finding a sitter nearly every day. She was getting up, getting dressed, and leaving the house every day as if she were going to work. But she wasn't. And I think this is where I want to stop it for part 1. I know this is a lot shorter than normal, but if I get into all of the searches and phone records and pings and calls and time, if I get into all that right now, this will be a 3-hour episode, and I still have to cook dinner. Also, I want to go back through and triple check a few different things. So, it'll be super long next week. Yay! I'm really sorry. This is a messed up case, and I'm sorry that we're all here listening to it now. This one wasn't that bad, though. This part wasn't that bad. So, I guess we can do it again next week. Same time, same place, next Wednesday. See you then.
That's how my mama murdered a podcast.